Welcome to Hail to the Podcast, brought to you by Maize and Blue Review. I'm going to be honest, I am not 100% sure how to start a show this loaded. So obviously we knew there would be some information coming. We had planned about talking about Michigan's win over Purdue and their upcoming game with Penn State. We're going to have to do another episode for that because we are loaded with breaking news and intel, which we have been loaded with intel all weekend, thanks to our Intel insider and publisher, Mr. Josh Henske. I don't want to ask how you're doing because I know how you're doing, but how you doing?
Yeah, feels good. Feels good. Took my lumps a little bit. I mean, not everything's out yet. Not everything's out yet, so I can't 100% do my victory lap yet. But we're getting there. We're getting there. I mean, it's trust the sources, trust the content. I won't steer you wrong.
There you go. Josh has, I'm a little biased because he's my boss and literally pays me, but Josh has been all over this. Him and I have been going back and forth for what feels like 2 years, but I think it's like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
With sources and trying to confirm everything. So we're not posting every rumor that's out there, right? We're trying to provide just the stuff that we can confirm. But a lot of things that we were expecting are starting to come out now, and Michigan is taking the gloves off, so to speak. So I do want to take a moment to kind of refresh everyone on what happened over the weekend and where we were coming into this day, right? So obviously on Friday, well, let's start Wednesday, Big Ten, because I think this is really relevant to this entire process, which is Michigan is under investigation and a process would normally play out. We know the NCAA will probably take a little bit longer, but the Big Ten is on a push. And why is that? On Wednesday, the Big Ten commissioner, Tony Petiti, had his call with Big Ten coaches, standard call. And Jim Harbaugh hopped off at the back. Hey, the dog's got to make an appearance. Jim Harbaugh jumped off at the back half of that call so that the coaches could share their frustrations around Michigan and more specifically Harbaugh. And then Thursday, Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petiti has his call with athletic directors, similar things, all this frustration, basically demanding that he acts on Michigan. Friday's in Ann Arbor for a field hockey tournament and meets with Santa Ono. We know that before that meeting, Santa released a letter basically saying, hey, we support the investigation. We will comply. We'd like to see due process play out. We don't think any suspensions outside of that are either allowed and do violate rules. And obviously there's been some hints, and now we know Michigan will pursue legal action if they choose to violate bylaws, right? So that's kind of where we at with the weekend. Josh, what kind of stuff were you hearing as we're getting through Saturday and Sunday and then kind of anticipating some of the things that are starting to come out today?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with what the big thing that's changed first. I think, starting probably around Thursday evening, there was talk and at least expectation that Harbaugh was going to see a suspension earliest as Monday. Now, obviously, that hasn't changed because of the fact that Michigan is pushed back on this thing. Santa Ono has been heavily involved. Ward Manuel has been heavily involved. I know regents have been heavily involved. So this is kind of a united front in terms of Michigan and what they're doing. I think this is probably the most united I have ever seen Michigan on anything. And that's huge. I mean, that is a very, very big deal for Michigan to be, and that's not even including them supporting Harbaugh, because that's 100% supported. There's nothing in doubt there. So, heading into Monday, today, there was kind of this wait and see process of is the Big Ten going to act? What are they going to do? Are they going to do a suspension? And the suspension talk wasn't really on the table right now and still kind of isn't. They've got a 48-hour rule to act here. And, Petiti was going into this meeting with both Ono and Manuel asking them to suspend Harbaugh for 2 games. Asking. Right. I think that's the big, bold lettering here. He literally asked them to do it. And, they basically, they asked Ono and Manuel, both kind of told him to go shove it, and rightfully so. I mean, A, where's the evidence? And B, why are you caving to the mob mentality? And that's exactly that's what Petiti did. And I get his position. He's a first year.
He's in a difficult spot.
He
Yeah.
is
The
in a
entire
difficult
conference
spot.
is coming at him. And
Yeah.
I get that part of it. Yeah.
Yes. But now, today, things are kind of a little more interesting. So, Michigan is 100% prepared to act if Petiti hands down a suspension. I would not be surprised if they've got, a judge on speed dial on their bat phone in Santa Ono's office, ready to go.
Santa phone.
Yeah, the Santa phone. As soon as as soon as they get the word, bam, they're pushing dial and getting an injunction and going to kind of shut all this down. So, and really, there's nothing out there to suggest that they won't get that injunction either. My understanding is they can get this done in a few hours. So, really, we're not even talking about, the stuff that's come out so far today.
We'll get it all.
We're still kind of talking about what's next. So, there's a real possibility that Petiti could go ahead with a suspension, but the gloves are off for Michigan at this point. They're going all in. They're going to throw some haymakers here, and we've kind of started to see it. Not essentially a big haymaker, but there's been some coordinated stuff that is coming out, and as far as I'm aware, still to come out today. We'll see if that still happens. But if the first thing,
say, we apologize for especially those watching us live on playback, but in between this, you're going to see Josh and I grabbing phones and looking away. We want to make sure we stay on top of these.
Right.
I'm going to take a moment real quick. Our buddy Brock Heilig is here, so I'm going to bring Brock in just so he can be a part of this. Josh, do you want to switch the background so the logo is not in your square real quick?
Yeah.
Hey, Brock, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
I don't know. We've gone from tired to like super energized, I think. I mean, we were keyed up for this to happen. So now that it's here we are. But real quick, before we move on, something I want to touch on that Josh said that I think is so important. And that is the unified support from Michigan, whether it's Santa Ono, Ward Manuel, Jim Harbaugh, the football team, right? When you look at the potential recruiting violations that occurred during COVID and that investigation, Michigan self-imposed a 3-game suspension after trying to negotiate a suspension, right? So I think it's fair to say at that point, Michigan either learned something or felt they saw something that was like, okay, there's something here worthy of a suspension if they self-imposed it. In this situation, they're all in backing Harbaugh 100%. So they're clearly confident from what's been presented to them by the NCAA and what they've done in their own investigation that they don't think this is going to touch Harbaugh. And we'll get into a piece of that with the NCAA in a second. Brock, I've got a whole bunch of stuff to go through. Can you keep an eye on information coming in as well? But I just quick reaction to some of this stuff that's coming out, Brock.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it, Trevor. Michigan's ready to go all in. They're backing Jim Harbaugh. And, there are so many reports and so many reporters who put out these reports that it's hard to keep track of who's reporting what. But I did see one report that someone, I think it may have been the official NCAA allegations, they tracked it and said they couldn't track any of it back to Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. I think that is a massive piece that was buried in an article, but
right. Yeah, and I do think that's probably the most important thing that I've heard today is that no one can prove that Harbaugh knew anything. And if you want to go out and make the argument that as the head man, Harbaugh needs to know what's going on with the program, then so be it. But
they can make the argument. The NCAA can make that argument after they've completed the investigation. Michigan has their 90 days to respond, right?
Yep.
There is a world where Jim Harbaugh can be held accountable for the actions of Connor Stalions without any knowledge. That cannot occur preemptively with no investigation or evidence. That's what we're really talking about today, right?
Yep.
Sorry, Brock, didn't mean to cut you off, but that piece fires me up. I've had a lot of people on Twitter. Well, he's the head coach. And there's kind of this like blanket responsibility now I'm starting to see where it's like, oh, he's the head coach. He's responsible for everything at his program. Okay. There are a lot of coaches in all of college football that have had a lot of terrible things, whether it was little rules being broken or literally people dying if we want to throw that blanket out there, the head coaches are responsible for everything that happens, then we can cast that blanket. But okay, lots of reports. I'm going to pull up presentations and kind of go through each piece. And I've tried to put this in an order that makes sense to me, but we'll see. Okay, so something that we knew Josh talked about at the beginning of the podcast here, but has been confirmed by multiple people. But Brett McMurphy tweeted out that Michigan has received a notice from the Big Ten indicating sign stealing allegations, hence the reporting about having the 48 hours till Wednesday. Found it interesting, though. It does not indicate what penalties would be administered. Josh, maybe you can talk about this more, but obviously the commissioner has the authority to do up to 2 games and $10,000 without involving the rest of the Big Ten in another process. So does this mean that process has started to do more than the 2 games, or are we still not there yet in terms of them being able to do more than that?
I think that's kind of the big question that still needs to be answered. I think, you still have to bring together a panel. This has got to go before a panel of Big Ten members, and they have to decide if anything over 2 games. I know once, according to the rules, once Petiti has said 2 games, if you do a panel, they cannot add to that penalty. So they have to make up a penalty on their own. If I'm understanding it right, there's so much going on that I might be wrong. So don't quote me on that. But apparently a lot of other fan bases have quoted me on a lot of stuff, and who's laughing now? But I think we'll see. I think the 2 games is in play, but not in play at the same time, if you get what I mean. Like they're going to fight this, and I would be thoroughly stunned if Jim Harbaugh is not on the sidelines on Saturday against Penn State. Thoroughly stunned if that doesn't happen. I mean, they've got this ready to go, the second this comes down. So even if, the Big Ten wants to be shiesty and do it on like a Friday evening or Saturday morning, which I don't see that happening, they're going to get this done. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is going to be on that plane to Happy Valley, regardless of whatever happens. I mean, I'm sure of it. So, we'll kind of see what happens, but I mean, man, the Big Ten is really fighting upstream right now. I mean, they're really in a pickle here, especially with this stuff that's coming out.
Well, and like this quote says, so obviously McMurphy has a Michigan source here. This is a little bit more on the nose and a little bit more aggressive than obviously Santa's more professional letter, that Michigan views this as a PR stunt in response to public pressure and in light of the conference's action up to this point, right? So we know other Big Ten people are demanding the Big Ten act on these reports, which are from leaks from Big Ten coaches, right? So there's a weird, dangerous precedent that's kind of being laid out here that I do think Tony Petiti is aware of, which is why he probably walked into the Michigan offices like, hey, bail me out here. Can you suspend him for a couple? Like, is there something we can do so I can appease these other programs? But, and we'll get into this more, right? You don't want to create that mentality, though, where a conference can come together and target another member and provide we've seen, I don't want to get into the thing too much and pretend like Michigan is victims of something from reporting, but like there's been a pretty clear laid out plan amongst some reporters on this. And when we've asked questions about the things that are being reported today, it's kind of like, well, that doesn't really matter. And now here we are. It's like, oh, well, yeah, I'm not going to name the reporter. There was one that was literally like, oh, so this is what was going on. You knew, buddy. You knew. Anyway, and McMurphy touches on what we've talked about, which is UM will legally fight any disciplinary actions. Like Josh said, we expect Harbaugh. I mean, we're not lawyers. Not going to pretend to be lawyers, but we expect Harbaugh on the sidelines. This was an interesting piece as well. And some people thought it was maybe a shot, if you will. But Ward Manuel is not going to be attending the CFP committee meetings this week. For those of you that don't know, Ward Manuel is a part of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Part of the rules are whenever Michigan is discussed, he has to leave the room. I think that's hilarious. And the idea that like there's no influence across, I think has always been funny to me. Before this got really aggressive in terms of the Big Ten's push for action on Harbaugh, the college football playoffs released their first rankings, Brock, and explicitly said they will not consider the reports or investigations. They view that as an NCAA issue. And I think there were some people that were maybe hoping the CFP would do something. And since then, we've seen kind of this uptick. So Ward's saying he's going to stick around in Ann Arbor while this ongoing investigation is going on. But some folks thought maybe that was a nice little shot from Ward as well. But what was kind of your thought, Brock, just in regard to the CFP rankings, what they said, and then the way the news kind of tricked up after that?
Yeah, before I touch on that, big shout out to my guy Carter there. I went to grade school with that guy, so good to see Carter in the
like 5 years ago?
Yeah. Oh no,
Carter, have you seen Tommy Boy? Do you have?
I haven't seen Carter in 5 months since
yeah.
school.
I'm sorry, Brock. Go ahead.
Anyway, they say that they weren't going to take the allegations into consideration when they were ranking the teams and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, now that is false at this point, it seems, because Ward Manuel's not going to be there. I think it's weird that they went through this whole process of basically eliminating Ward from the committee, at least for this week. I don't see anywhere where it says that. He says, look, he looks forward to being in the room next week. Okay. So
just to be clear, he's saying he's going to stay in town this week because of everything that's going on with Michigan regarding the investigation and obviously having to respond to the potential suspension on Wednesday.
Yeah.
That some people are reading into that a little bit more was all I was kind of saying, but more in line just that Ward is on the committee and the committee itself said, we're not considering these allegations as they are now.
What's strange is if he has to leave the room anytime Michigan is discussed, then I don't see the problem in him being there to discuss other teams. Like I get if he has to stay back to tend to things in Ann Arbor and potentially respond to allegations or disciplinary actions from the NCAA or the Big Ten, but I don't see any conflict of interest with Ward Manuel being there. And I think this just shows people that they are thinking about it. At least they'll go on record and boo Corrigan or whoever Reese Davis will interview during the college football playoff selection show will always say that it doesn't impact, but it's in everyone's minds.
Exactly.
They'll all say it has no impact, but everyone knows it's going on. So
I think it was Herb Street that said that. That's like, you can say you're not going to discuss it in the room, but like you can't prevent it not from being there. And
right.
I mean, their logic's always been kind of swayed, right? Where like you have Ohio State ranked at 1 because of their resume. We all expected that based on previous committee, rankings. That's not shocking. But then you see Georgia ahead of a Michigan or even a Florida State where their resume actually, Michigan and Georgia's resumes were pretty similar before their big win against Missouri this weekend. It's like, well, that doesn't really add up. So there's always kind of this conflicting info, but anyway. So Ward will be in town.
Yeah. I will say just a little bit on football actually here for a second. It will be interesting to see if Michigan beats Penn State this weekend in a more dominating fashion than Georgia beat Missouri. I wonder if the committee looks at those two wins as kind of the same, because Missouri was ranked in that like 10 to 12 range and Penn State's kind of right in that same area.
And then you'll have a comparison to Ohio State as well. I mean, not direct, obviously there's not, I don't want to get into the transitive property thing, but anyway. Okay. Now let's get into some of the meat of the stuff that came out. Yahoo Sports put out an article where the headline says NCAA revealed Michigan findings to the Big Ten, conference mulling Jim Harbaugh suspension. So again, we know that. We know the Big Ten has been getting what they have from the NCAA. We know they're mulling the suspension. We just talked about that and Michigan having to respond. But in the article, there's some interesting things, and probably the most interesting piece to me, but NCAA revealed its findings to Michigan, like we said, as they look at potential suspension of Harbaugh, school gears up for legal actions. The NCAA's findings do not connect the in-person scouting and recording of opponents' sidelines to Harbaugh, sources say, an absence of evidence essential to a potential lawsuit from the school and the coach against the league. Again, we talked about this a little bit ago. If the NCAA does their investigation and under their bylaws wants to tie this to the terrible lack of institutional control, I don't think it would ever get that way. We're talking about a rule that the NCAA itself has called outdated, has said they were going to get rid of, and thinks it provides little or no advantage. But anyway, again, in the context of a preemptive suspension, the NCAA is saying we've got nothing. that connects Harbaugh to this, right? So over the weekend, school is given a period of several days in which to mount a response, blah, blah, blah. So we're looking at Wednesday and then the legal action. But Josh, in line with your intel reporting and knowledge, what was kind of your thoughts to see? Again, this just kind of get buried in there. Oh, by the way, there's no connection to Harbaugh yet.
Yeah, I mean, this is just I don't even know what to call it. I mean, this is just the least shocking thing that's I've ever heard. We've discussed this for weeks, and and people are just now starting to catch up and starting to wise up. I mean, my first reaction was, duh. I mean, that was my first reaction. I mean, like, it's just so obviously people are just, I mean, the collusion is hilarious. This whole situation is ridiculous. I mean, you're talking about, a conference that was so quick to whine and throw a tantrum like a little toddler in the middle of a grocery store who doesn't get a piece of candy, and the parent has to drag the kid out of the store. And now you're talking about the same program, the same bunch of schools who tried so hard to collude to beat Michigan and end up getting dog walked in the process. Is hilarious. This is hilarious. This whole situation is so hilariously stupid that it just blows my mind that we're even here at this point. I mean, this is the least shocking news ever that Jim Harbaugh is involved in this. Well, yeah, he said so himself in his release the second this stuff came out. Duh. I mean, we all know Connor Stalions is working behind this, and we know that was Connor Stalions on the sidelines in Central Michigan too. This is just a guy that got a little too big for his britches in terms of scouting, and who'll probably, fortunately to himself, probably parlay this into an NFL job. And then I'm seeing this tower of power here. You're blind. Learn how to spell, you ignoramus.
Oh, we got fired up, Josh, folks.
Of course, it's the morons with no name in the comments that can't spell your correctly. You stupid moron. Anyway. Oh my God. It's just been all week. These stupid mouth breathers will not stay out of my mentions. And now stuff's starting to happen. I can actually puff my chest out a little bit and call out these dumbasses for being exactly who they are. Dumbasses. Anyway, right. I digress.
That's some digression. Brock, do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah. I don't know how to respond after that. Account 22, I think, said it best in a comment. I'm not sure how to pull it up. He says Michigan will easily get the injunction if the Big Ten suspends him. I totally agree.
Yes.
If the Big Ten tries to suspend Harbaugh for 2 or more games for something that they can't even prove that he did, Michigan should have no problem getting an injunction and getting that suspension totally wiped away. And I'm totally with Josh. I feel like I'd be mind blown if Harbaugh is not on the sidelines on Saturday against Penn State. And even if he's not, even in some crazy world where he's not, I do feel like Michigan, that would just rile Michigan up even more. And at that point, Penn State's in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to get into that piece of it, but yeah. So the next piece of this that I kind of wanted to talk about was, again, while under the bylaws, head coaches are presumed responsible for staff members' actions, the Big Ten sportsmanship policy does not feature such a clause, right? This policy holds institutions, not head coaches, as responsible for and therefore may be held accountable, blah, 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 right? So if anything, it's more of a Michigan problem than a Harbaugh problem, right? I think had Connor Stalions not been suspended with pay during the investigation, obviously they could come in and suspend him. If any assistant or coach or other person through the investigation was possibly tied to it, they could suspend him. But that hasn't occurred yet. In fact, we've talked about this on Hail to the Podcast multiple times, where the initial story, the way it was portrayed, was this tactical military genius mind was hired by Harbaugh to orchestrate this complex web of spies. But I can't even remember all the different verbiage, right? And then the more came out, we learned, and again, I don't mean any offense to Connor, but like The guy was using his own name to buy tickets. He was paying with his own Venmo account, right? He's bragging in text messages about being around the team, right? Is this fanboy, whatever. And even that, like I've seen people bring up the $15,000, 15 grand, do the math over 40, 50 games. The number keeps changing. That barely covers tickets, right? This isn't a massive investment. Again, his personal Venmo was used, and there's been no connections to other staff, Harbaugh, Michigan, whatever, when it comes to the paying part of it. So can the Big Ten apply an NCAA bylaw to override its own bylaw to suspend Harbaugh? That's the legal argument right there that they're trying to fight, Josh.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I don't want to go back because I know I mentioned a lot of things. I want to go back and want to address this Connor point I made.
The central thing is fair for sure.
So yes, that was Connor on the sidelines. No, he was not working for Michigan at the time. He was I don't know how to put this, freelancing for Central Michigan. And so yeah, I mean,
well, let's be clear. Central Michigan has not confirmed that it was him on the sideline yet because they don't know how he got there.
Right.
And how he got there will be bad for at least someone at Central Michigan, if not a lot of people at Central Michigan. Okay. So in order, if I misspell anything, don't you went off on that guy, but you can't be an Ohio State fan trying to troll us and spell wrong. That's where you're going to lose, Josh. But anyway.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. 100%.
For Connor to be at that Central Michigan State game, which again was on a Friday evening, right? So Michigan wasn't playing, in CMU sideline gear, not just like Central Michigan clothes, but like literally what all the coaches wear and the hat, right? And having a pass, which they've said his name wasn't on the list, which means a fake name was used or who knows what else. Like we're just going to get into hypotheticals.
Yeah, it could have been Ben Smith for all we know.
Right.
And, you know, everyone's going to be like, oh, who's Ben Smith? And then they're just not going to care.
And why? I mean, again, there's a lot of questions, but he was clearly using some sort of disguise. You could argue what was going on with the beard goatee, but the hair wig thing, like something was going on there. It's really bizarre. But the longer that goes on, I think it's pretty clear that's going to be much worse for Central than Michigan. But yeah, again, just so we're clear here, I don't want people thinking I'm here to carry water for Michigan. If rules were broken, the rule breakers should be punished. They should be punished fairly based on precedent or something to match the crime. I hate using the crime. This isn't a criminal proceeding, right? I do have, I don't know if issues are the right word, but like the rule itself has a lot of weird gray area in it because it's outdated and the NCAA is terrible about fixing these things. They talked about this rule 2 years ago, providing no advantage. And of course, which we've talked about, when that rule was issued in 1994, not everyone had a phone that they could videotape with, right? The fact that Connor's mom might have been in a seat. Yeah, there's 100,000 people there with the same ability. I can watch the games on Hulu at any time. I could videotape them, upload them on YouTube, and anybody can watch it, right? There's serious technology issues with the rule. Again, a rule's a rule, whatever. I'm not trying to whatever. But what I have an issue with, and what Michigan clearly has an issue with, is you're trying to suspend Harbaugh before you've done the investigation process, clearly outlawed what rules have been broken, shown that he's even tied to it. And it feels like, Brock, the reason they're trying to do that is because these other Big Ten coaches are really, really mad. And we'll get to why that's funny in a minute. So don't give away too much. But that comes back to this whole, God, I hate using mob mentality term. But look, we're angry, do what we ask. We don't care about our rules, processes, bylaws. And like Santono said, all we're asking for is what every other program would want, which is the due process and for the rules to be followed.
Yeah, I do not envy Commissioner Petiti right now. He's in a very tough spot. He hasn't even, I don't even think he's been on the job for a year. And
it was May.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's got to deal with this. And I understand where he's at. I totally get why he asked Michigan to self-impose another suspension on Harbaugh, because he doesn't want to be the bad guy. But either way, he's going to end up being the bad guy to someone. If he suspends Harbaugh, then all of Michigan hates him, and if he doesn't, then the other 13 teams in the Big Ten also hate him, and coaches too, right? And obviously the coaches are the ones behind this big push, and the news came out of their video call the other night when they were talking with Commissioner Petiti and just explaining to him how elaborate this alleged scheme is, and what Michigan is said to be doing. I totally don't envy this guy and what he has to do at all. That's about all I have to say. I can't imagine what he's going through, and he's the bad guy either way. He can't win.
Just real quick, I'm going to touch on a few comments and then get into the next portion. I don't know if you guys saw this, but as a longtime Michigan fan who knows the history of former Big Ten Commissioner Jim Delaney, seeing that he's advising this investigation raised my eyebrows, to say the least, or consulting or whatever. Thought that was an interesting, almost inappropriate piece, but whatever.
Get out of here, old man.
And there's a lot of folks talking about ESPN versus Fox. We all know that part of it, right? ESPN's ties to the SEC, and obviously the Big Ten leaving, and then Fox's ties to the Big Ten. Like, I don't know if I want to call it a negative, but obviously these media contracts, these conferences are almost part media company at this point because of the investment that they've gotten. It's such a piece of it. And I mean, we've even seen reports of Fox Sports potentially being involved in some of these discussions. And people have asked, like, are you really going to punish Michigan when they make this much money? Like,
that's true, by the way.
Yeah. What, them being involved with it? Yeah. So I don't know. That whole thing kind of makes me feel gross, right? Because again, I just want the process to play out. God forbid, right? But all right. What started it all, that the piece we've been waiting for, and somebody asked, Josh has hinted at additional drips to come. The faucet isn't off. We'll put it that way. But the AP put out a report. Larry Lage, who, let me just clarify for folks, yes, does cover the Michigan football team, but is a very loyal Michigan State alumni. As Josh pointed out, was literally Sparty at one point. Like, this idea that, again, we were talking about the bias with ESPN and Fox, and I know some of that exists. An Associated Press reporter is not going to be putting, it's just crazy. But anyway, Toski, them turf always drops.
He's back. I love you.
Yeah, Toski is the guy. But anyway, so this is the big part. Let's get into this, okay? So to
backtrack, though, the most important part is that Larry is very good at his job.
Thank you. I don't want to cut that off. Yes. Larry is a very respected.
He's a very good AP reporter. I mean, you don't just fall into an AP gig. He's very good at what he does.
Thank you. I should have stuck on that more. You're right. So here's what Larry was able to collect in his reporting. A former employee at a Big Ten football program said Monday it was his job to steal signs. Pause. What have we been saying this entire time? Everyone steals signs, right? Yeah. And they have a person who does it. I know how Connor potentially obtained the signs is what's problematic here. That's the future scouting portion of it. That's why calling it a sign stealing scandal has kind of been flawed from the beginning, right? But I bring that part up because every single time I see somebody show a clip of Connor Stalions on the sideline talking to someone as if that's evidence of anything other than him doing his job, it drives me insane. Every team has a person that does that, right? And, they put their hands up, they meant run or pass. Every team does that. Again, through the investigation, we will learn whether this iPhone footage or whatever provided, broke rules, blah, blah, whatever. But right out the gate, I'm not saying it's an excuse, blah, blah, everybody does it, right? Okay. This is where it gets interesting. He was given details from multiple league schools to compile a spreadsheet of play calling signals used by Michigan last year. The employee said he recently shared the documents, which showed the Wolverines signs and corresponding plays. Pause again. This is the part everybody keeps saying about Connor breaking the rules was, he's able to take the signs and link it up, signs to plays, etc. The reason this really was like, whoa, to me, and Josh, we'll stop here and I'll start asking you guys some questions. If I asked you, would you rather have footage from 130 yards away on an iPhone or information from a Big Ten staffer who just watched Michigan play, who will provide enough, both will provide you the information to correlate sign stealing with play calling. Do you want Connor's family member, D3 coach, who didn't want to sit in the rain 150 yards away, or that Big Ten staffer who just played Michigan?
Yeah, so you mean to tell me that, people are going to Ryan Walters to get information? Because you're 100% correct. That was Ryan Walters. I mean, the guy, imagine saying what you did during the week and then getting absolutely dog walked during the game, and then double down on what you said in post game. And then 2 days later, you get your pants pulled down in front of the whole class. I mean,
dog walked and pantsed.
I mean, that's hilarious. But yes, I mean, it's collusion. It's what it is. It's 100% collusion. And I don't care if you're best friends with someone at a rival school. That's collusion. You can't work together like that. It's against the sportsmanship rules.
Well, and that's literally future scouting.
Yeah. And to quote the my good friend Michael Scott, oh, how the turntables. Again, and this is exactly why I said what I said on the boards on Sunday. I said, Michigan is coming out and planning to flip the script. That wasn't my words. That was someone that I talked to's words. And we've only gotten this tiny little, morsel of food. It's like, someone threw out a tiny little treat to you, like you're like a little dog, and someone threw a tiny little biscuit out to you, and now you're following them around wanting more. This was the tiniest little biscuit, and now the narrative is completely flipped on its head. Now it nullifies about 95% of the signal stealing talk. And now people are laughing this whole thing off. It's because it's become ridiculous, and the whole sham thing it was from the start is now being exposed. So it's this whole thing is just so ridiculously stupid, and it just gets more dumb by the day. And now here we are just talking about the dumbest story ever of just making this thing just turn completely dumb. It's ridiculous. This whole thing is ridiculous. And it's hilarious that the entire well, maybe not the entire conference, but probably Michigan has proof of more than just Ryan Walters doing this. A good amount of schools, confiding in one another to get information, and they still lose. It's hilarious.
And
I was just going to say,
your average fan, appreciate it. Real quick, Brock, sorry.
That's all right.
Someone else brought up our podcast of former players. There's a reason a lot of coaches have or have not commented on it. And there were, all these players were like, yeah, we all do it. Like that was out there. And again, I know that's never been an excuse, but it's nice to kind of start to get some information around the level of what was happening. And like Josh said, again, before we get into whether that breaks rules or anything, again, it's the narrative piece, right? That Michigan had this massive advantage, which even if no one else was doing this, you're not going to convince me it was a massive advantage because the NCAA has said it isn't. But now we know Michigan against Illinois. Illinois had Michigan signs. J.J. McCarthy used the wrist card for the first time. Those signs were shared with Purdue in the Big Ten championship game. And while it hasn't been reported yet, there's potential intel. This was happening to Michigan this year, right? So anyway, Brock, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts in your head, so I won't even tee you up. Just go ahead.
What's crazy to me is when this all started, it was just Michigan, and then some stuff came out, and then maybe there was another team involved. Some people speculated that it might be Ohio State, and then now Purdue's kind of involved, Illinois is involved. It's just crazy to me how this has snowballed from just being Michigan and fans calling for Michigan, for Harbaugh's head, and Michigan needs to be banned from the college football playoff and all this kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden, we've got at least 4 or 5 Big Ten teams that could potentially, be roped into this as well, which I think is really, really crazy. The fact that Illinois had Michigan signs is weird. What's crazy to me in this writing is that the text messages that the one former employee had were shared with staffers at other Big Ten schools. So, these guys are sharing documents, text messages of these play calling signals that were used by Michigan. They're sharing them with other schools, which I'm no expert on NCAA rules or sportsmanship rules or anything like that, but that certainly doesn't seem ethical, right? So it's all crazy. I can't believe what this has turned into after just what are we on week 2, week 3 by now?
I also think it's hilarious that Illinois stinks now that Ryan Walters left. I think that's really convenient. I'm gonna do my Brian Windhorst here. Why is that?
Okay.
Why is that?
I think it's because NFL talent left Illinois, personally.
Yeah, and your sign stealer left too.
Yeah, and again, this just goes in line with it. It's not to defend what Michigan did. It's to defend the fact that I was never that outraged by this because we knew sign stealers existed and communicated and shared information, right? That was just part of it. The screenshots, the text messages with staffers at other Big Ten schools. Again, like I said, for those of you saying blanket head coach is responsible, whatever happens at your program, I hope that's going to continue to apply. If your school had a staffer sharing signs and signals in this spreadsheet, right? Yeah. The next part too, just I think this is important. He stayed honest because he feared the disclosures could impact his coaching career, right? Because obviously, go ahead and do this, just don't talk about it. The spreadsheet was compiled with details from a handful of coaches and programs across the Big Ten. One more time. The spreadsheet was compiled with details from a handful of coaches and programs across the Big Ten. Again, this isn't somebody in the stands, some random person. This is coaches.
I almost picture like this like Google spreadsheet document that all the Big Ten coaches just share. It's just shared between all 14 of their Google accounts or something, or 13, and they're all targeting Michigan or something, and they all just kind of add stuff whenever they find something and things like that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how complex or not complex that got. I don't even want to look for the comment, but there's also been a narrative. Well, Michigan was cheating so bad, so they had to fight back, blah, blah. You don't know that. You don't know the timeline of any of this. And it's just, again, just absurd. And to clarify,
I do think it's convenient also, too, that Michigan just randomly one year decided to add that massive fence by its practice field.
Drip.
It's a massive fence. I mean, that's not just some to keep the knock the breeze down. I mean, that's a massive fence that they added to that practice field.
At first, we all figured it was kind of just typical Jim Harbaugh, just trying to gain any competitive advantage he could by keeping his practices private. But at this point, it kind of seems like maybe he knew something that none of us did.
Well, and for those that aren't familiar with that area, there is a overpass / bridge that you can stand on and just literally watch practice from. Back in 2017, I had a photo sent to me of Michigan wearing their all maize uniforms before the Florida game. And I just tweeted it like, oh, that's kind of interesting, and I had people at Michigan very mad at me because then they had to announce that they were going to wear these maize uniforms and whatever. But that's how easy it was to get this. So the fact that, and you can go back to Bo and him knowing that Ohio State people were doing that and taping it. But the fact that, they just did that. Right. And again, the narrative that just continues to bother me, that you want to pretend this is why Michigan was winning, that, they just all of a sudden got better because of this. No, they had a good roster the year before. They made a lot of coaching changes. It's just, and if Michigan fans were in the other shoe, if Ohio State had the exact same reporting that had come out, Michigan fans would be doing the same thing. You either know it or you're lying, right? That's the tribalism of college sports, right? We know that. And that's why now with this new information, Michigan fans are elated and whatever, and the other fans are trying to dumb it down, right? Tribalism is real. That's why I really liked what Santaono said in regards to, we just want what every other program would want. I think it was a really good way to put it. Let's see if there's anything else in here I want to touch on. He also said, that he gave the details because he thought Harbaugh was being unfairly blamed for the actions of a rogue staffer. He knows that because he coordinates with all the other rogue staffers, right? So last little piece of this. Brock, you asked the question. The alleged actions by conference schools potentially violate the Big Ten sportsmanship policy, which could lead to punishment by the commissioner's office. Harbaugh's program also faces that possibility. So yes, for those saying this isn't the same thing as Connor, or this isn't cheating, or this didn't break any rules. One, it potentially did. Two, maybe there should be an investigation, a process, and we shouldn't assign guilt to people until we know, right? It's just the same situation, right? Again, if you want to call it tribalism, whatever you want, but.
Do we want to talk about this latest Ross Dellinger story?
Dude, I've been staring. I told you guys to do the work for me. So sure. What is it?
On Monday, the NCAA notified the Big Ten that there are no known connections between Ohio State coach Ryan Day or his family and the organization's investigation into Michigan. Senior officials at both the NCAA and Big Ten tell Yahoo Sports. Duh. I mean, they're not. You got to be stupid to do all of this work however they got into the information and have it linked back to you. I mean, you got to be dumb. So that's no surprise. Of course, there's no known connection to any of this. I mean, there's got to be. It's ridiculous. That's of course it's duh. And no one is saying Ryan Day did this. I mean, no one of. I didn't. I sure. I never said Ryan.
It was out there, and then obviously like his brother connections. I will say, I this is a piece I've wanted to know about, and we're hoping comes out in the drip that there are legitimate concerns about this firm, and who, or at least a want to know about the firm and who hired them, and then how the information was obtained. Again, does that free up Michigan from any punishment or change their investigation? No, but it's just interesting to me. Like, again, some of these national reporters, when it comes up, they're like, it's not really relevant. Why do you get to decide that? Present the story, let everyone make their own opinions and decisions, right? Maybe it's not relevant. Could it be, somebody associated with gambling? We've seen that theory out there that, a sports book was interested in this, or who knows, right? Somebody does. And it'd be nice if we knew, as long as you're going to let anonymous Big Ten coaches say, this is the worst scandal. It's worse than the Astros. It's worse than the Patriots. Michigan can't comment on it beyond the little things we've seen. And you're just going to ignore what I think is a pretty major part of the story. That's where I kind of go, I'd like to know more. But again, that's why I'm just saying, just let the process play out. Do the investigation. Why are you suspending or trying to suspend Jim Harbaugh right now? Just doesn't make sense to me.
Yep.
I agree.
I've talked a lot. Brock, do you want to talk?
I was just thinking about, I saw a video either this morning or last night where a reporter asked Ryan Day about, the speculation that he and Ohio State were involved with turning Michigan in or things of that sort. And all he said was that he had no comment at this time, which I kind of thought was weird. It would have been pretty easy for him to just say no, but I guess with everything that's going on, it's probably best for him just to say no comment and not really get involved.
I made some jokes on our board about if you're reading body language or like what he does with his eyes or whatever, but who knows? He was probably told if it comes up, say no comment, but who knows, man. I will say, and I've seen Michigan and Ohio State fans kind of rally around this with all the stuff that's been thrown back and forth in that regard. Don't you ever tell me that is not the best rivalry in sports ever again, right? This has been wild. So we can go through. If you guys have any other questions, I know we've been kind of pulling them up as we go. You guys have been having a lot of great and also crazy conversation over in the thread, but we can take a look at some of these or answer some questions if we can. I just saw one I wanted to get to, but they're moving quick, so now I'm losing it. So this is kind of an interesting note. Another question about the sportsmanship rule. If teams thought Michigan was stealing signs last year, why didn't they report them last year? Were they not putting the conference at risk? So back to this whole Michigan only won because they stole signs, Ohio State 2022. Ohio State's already admitted that they changed their signs, right? And teams change their signs every week. God, another narrative I'm sick of, like, oh, we can't even practice because we have to change. Come on. We saw the Rutgers with the guys dressed up in different colors, which, again, every single time I see footage of a sideline with signs, I laugh because I'm like, this is what you claim is so bad. But anyway,
that wasn't the Wiggles on the sidelines?
You like the Wiggles is good. Teletubbies as well.
Yeah, that one's the Wiggles.
No, they're Josh, and correct me if I'm wrong or whatever, but I think there's a pretty firm belief that this wasn't going to get touched, right? Initially, when this was brought forward and information was exchanged, this wasn't going to get touched. And then Michigan continues to come back, excel, national championship favorite. Jim Harbaugh contract extension comes out, right? A lot of people have been pretty candid about like how this is personal against Harbaugh, because I think teams were mad that they were seeing the success and what Harbaugh was coming to. And then the stuff was going to get leaked. So the NCAA is like, oh, we got to investigate this. And then coaches and ADs are yelling on conference calls and demanding action. So now the Big Ten commissioner is like, okay, we got to respond to this. There's stuff like this that we never hear about all the time, right? Because normally NCAA doesn't comment on investigations, especially when there hasn't even been a formal investigation open. Schools don't comment on it. Like, a lot of this stuff happens behind the scenes without us knowing. This situation, people started leaking stuff going public, and it kind of forced the NCAA in the conference's hand.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's the mob mentality that people are caving into. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily buy into the theories that they want to just, they want to bury Harbaugh and bury Michigan. I mean, I think they would like to see that happen in the process, but I think people were just getting too whiny and too sick of getting beaten by Michigan and soundly and doing what they're doing. And I think, it came down to Michigan just being too good at stealing signs, I guess. I mean, yeah, they probably didn't do it in the most savory of ways. But now we're kind of, things are coming out to show that, hey, Michigan isn't the only team that does this. And there's proof that it's, happening in between schools in the conference behind closed doors. So, yeah, I don't necessarily, believe it's like a piling on thing with the other NCAA investigation and all that. But, we'll kind of, there's still a lot of things that have to still come out,
What do you think about the theory? I don't like using the word theory, but again, just if we're trying to look ahead on what could be next steps, right? You had already said this weekend, and now we know, like, Michigan's been given this notice and they need to respond. Like, it felt like the Big Ten was going to suspend Jim Harbaugh, right? Like, it just felt like that was probably a matter of time. Has Michigan done something to delay this? Yeah, right. But there's quite a few people that have said, what if the Big Ten suspends Jim Harbaugh and Michigan files their legal rights and this gets put on hold and Jim Harbaugh is going to coach the rest of the season, and the Big Ten can say, hey, we did something. Mm-hmm. We did something. Is that part of it almost? Like, it's just like, because Petiti's like, I can't not do anything because then they're, blah, blah. Like Brock said, you're in a tough spot here, right? Like,
yeah.
Is there a chance that that's what happens? All of this is Harbaugh gets suspended, Michigan files what they do, and then it's like, okay, now we're back to square one, which is we'll let the investigation play out and then we'll deal with this at the end.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get suspended personally. I think
you don't now.
Harbaugh?
Like, at all, or like even because
you mean by the NCAA?
No. Are you saying you don't think the Big Ten will try to suspend Harbaugh at all now? Or are you saying it won't stick if Michigan fights?
End result that he's not going to
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, but no, I think it's tough with this new information now. I mean, Michigan's got some ammo to fight back with. And so I don't know. I mean, I would not be surprised if the Big Ten tries it. And then, Michigan is going to get that injunction filed. But, again, we're at a point now still where it's still tough to say how this one's going to go. I mean, things are getting clear. There's a path now to be clear that, that this thing can kind of go away because, Michigan's not the only person to do this, but the only place to do this. But yeah, I mean, there's still so many more unknowns, and it's we'll kind of see where it goes. I mean, we're still. I mean, this 48 hours are still going to be interesting for sure.
Oh yeah,
Brock, I want to ask you just because you cover these games for us in person. You're at all the press conferences, right? I know what players say before games, and we obviously know where there's a little bit more acknowledgement in the after of the games. But for someone who's been around the team literally all year, as much as anybody, how do you think, and in the Penn State game being as big as it is, how do you think all of this is being taken in right now?
It's kind of hard to answer that because I feel like it might be different for each individual player. And I know they've had meetings and things like that, but what you said was right. The comments they give pregame and throughout the week are much more calculated than the ones they give after the game, which are just much more emotional, I guess. A lot of the players have preached that the team is just that Harbaugh, I guess, is preaching to the team that they need to be on a one-track mind and just focused on the task at hand and winning each individual game. But I do think a lot of the players have talked about how that they see it. They turn on the TV, they open up Twitter and social media and things, and they see people talking about it. And the reason I think it's different for each individual player is because I think some players are better at blocking that kind of stuff out than others. But it's there. They're seeing it. That Roman Wilson, I think, was one player who admitted to it after the game on Saturday. But they're I know Harbaugh is preaching the one-track mind. I think the players are buying into it. They're focused on winning football games, and this hasn't had an effect on them yet. I can't say for sure whether it will or won't against Penn State. One thing I want to talk about that I just remembered from the post-game press conference, Ward Manuel walked in, and it was the players had just finished the first round of players. I think it was JJ and a few other guys, and Ward Manuel walks in right before we were supposed to talk to Harbaugh, and so a few of the reporters walked over to Ward Manuel and started asking him anything, just trying to get any sort of information about what's going on. And Ward was strict. He was like, I have no comment at all. And reporters tried to get creative with the way they were asking their questions and trying to get just anything out of him. He got feisty. He's like, I don't know what you don't understand about no comment. And
yeah, I saw that.
Harbaugh came out and Harbaugh came out and he had the same thing. Obviously, he was asked about it and he said he can't comment at this time. But I do think they're focused on Penn State and just winning football games.
The last thing, Brock, we talked about the players' comments, Jim Harbaugh's comments. What he is able to say has been basically, if they're coming after me, I'm fine with it. Right? He's really, and look, we've talked about this a bunch in terms of the Harbaugh people think they know from whether it's his press appearances or the way media portrays him in different things, and the Jim Harbaugh we hear about, whether it's I know Josh has and I have as well talked to him and outside of the press setting, right? And then talking to players and parents and what they think of this man and how much they love him and support him and trust him. For him to stand up there and basically be like, I mean, I'll let you speak on anything he said that kind of stuck out to you. But for me, it was just, hey, come at me. And what I'm preaching is come to work every day, right? I mean, he was smiling. I know people tried to, look how shook he is at a conference a couple weeks ago to get him. Like, you don't know Jim Harbaugh. You don't go every week, like whatever. But anyway, the players' comments you spoke on, what about Harbaugh with the little bit he's been able to say that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I wasn't there today, so I didn't get to see his press conference, but he is normally very just twitchy. It's hard for him to focus, and he doesn't really make eye contact with anyone. He kind of just looks around and avoids directly answering any questions. But yeah, he did say today, if I remember seeing it right, he said, like, come at me, don't come at my players or my kids or anything like that. And I think that's really telling about Harbaugh as a person, is that he's willing to take all the bullets that people want to fire at Michigan, and as long as they don't fire him at the kids and the players, and he always has their best interest in mind. And I do think that's the sign of a good leader. So I think that was good from Harbaugh, and for him to say that, and in my opinion, he fully believes he did nothing wrong. I think Michigan, everyone in that program believes Harbaugh is innocent. And so for Harbaugh to say, to take all the shots you want at him, even though he firmly believes he's innocent, that's really telling, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, Harbaugh, I mean, you got to have a steady leader during this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And, that's what Harbaugh is. He's not too low. He's not too high. He's just flatline, basically, in the good way, not the literal you're dead way, flatline. But he's right down the middle. He's always been that way. He hasn't changed during all of this. He hasn't been acting strangely, and I think he's a good deflector of all this stuff. I mean, he's had to do that for years. So, I mean, this is no different than anything that he's ever faced before. And I thought it was good to say that he can, leave his kids and leave the players out of it, because people do use the picture of his kid as a meme and all that stuff. And it's that stuff he's very aware of. Just because he's not on Twitter doesn't mean he's not seeing any of this stuff. So, I think he's the the kind of leader that you need right now. And I mean, obviously this is probably one of the more difficult coaching jobs of his career right now, is to kind of finish this season strong, and how they plan to coming into the year, and kind of keeping the distractions away. They've done a really good job of doing that, but these past couple of weeks have really kind of threatened all of it. So, we'll kind of see how. I mean, obviously, no better time to start, seeing if that theory holds true than Saturday against Penn State. I mean, that's the best opportunity. But I mean, I haven't seen anything different, and he's been consistent the whole time.
Yep. Yeah, obviously a massive game Saturday. We've talked about Michigan's schedule all season. After every game, dominating win, they did this and that, but they haven't played this, whatever. Not going to learn until Penn State. We're not going to learn to. It came fast. I don't know if you guys disagree, but I can't believe we're at the 10th game of the season already. But there's going to be a lot to learn and narratives to talk about on Saturday, right, on the field, right? A lot of things going to be determined on the field. So obviously a lot of you have joined us on this live stream of this podcast. We appreciate you. Typically we go live with this show every Sunday at 6. We thought it would probably make sense to push it to Monday. Decision was wise. But we'd really appreciate if you like, subscribe, notification bell. Every time we go live with any podcast or any content. Posted an interview with Ladarius Henderson today. Dennis Fithian is live pretty often with our daily show as well. And then, of course, my line, for those of you that watch all the time, that most of what we talked about today, blah, 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 Michigan.rivals.com. Josh has been just all over this. I've had to have late night talks with him to make sure he's okay and keep him going. But he's killing it, man. And again, I know I'm biased, but as somebody who has consumed Michigan content for most of my life, Josh, really impressed with you, man. Like I told you, just an honor to work with you.
Not that old.
What?
I'm not that old.
What'd I say that makes you old?
No, I'm just kidding. Because you're like consuming Michigan content for most of my life.
I'm saying as somebody, not your content, just I've consumed a lot of Michigan content.
I know. I'm just
joking.
I'm just joking.
I'm trying to give this like really sweet compliment.
See, I can't take compliments well.
I know you can't.
I deflect.
I know you can't. Should we do a Josh therapy session real quick? But no, guys, Michigan.rivals.com. the amount of folks that have joined in the last few weeks. Obviously, I know there's a big story. You're looking for information, but the people that have joined and come into the community and talked in our message board community, the Den, I've seen a lot of you in the comments as well saying you've recently joined and how happy you are. We're happy to have you. We've been building over the past couple of years this vision of what we wanted our community to be, and we feel like we're getting there. We're really, really close, and you guys are a part of it, and we appreciate you. And if you want to be a part of it, again, michigan.rivals.com. If you want to use the promo code for a free month, you can type in blue30, and at least I'll give you a free month to give us a shot. We'd appreciate that as well. But other than that, Josh, any ideas? What are we kind of holding pattern until Wednesday, you think?
Yeah, maybe it's possible. There could be something. I know Michigan has ammo. We'll see if they plan to release it. I think, maybe we'll see. I mean, I don't think that part that was released today was the whole thing that they have yet. So,
And look
night is still young.
Oh God, don't say that. And then for those of you that are actually interested in football games, we will be covering the upcoming game this week. And then obviously Brock, like I said, will be in Happy Valley covering the game for us as well. So for Josh and Brock, thank you all so much for joining us on the show and contributing and the questions. And we hope to see you soon on Hail to the Podcast.